3 fatalities, 1,200 in property damage, 3,000 credits in stolen merchandise, half a dozen missing persons, and enough contraband that if my ship gets stopped, we're all swinging on ropes. Agenda begins. Be fair, Captain. The contraband is nothing more than zing for our food. She's interrupted by Brent's second. A strange command structure had worked out with Brent leading the charge in general and Marcus being his right hand. Not that it stopped any of the men from doing their own thing whenever they felt like it. But in a group, it was usually Brent that kept a lid on things and could be trusted to know what everyone was doing or had done, with Marcus being the one when Brent wasn't around, which makes it even worse. Now, what was that about recruits, our missing persons? Yay, some of the station residents decided they wanted to stick with us. We've got 4 of those gobes slobbering all over Victor during the stampede to try and get some proper salt and pepper. The one that bounced off my shield came back with 3 of her sisters. They jumped on him and grabbed the belt and then fell deep in lust when it took him about half a K of solid running to even notice the silly little things. The cloaker named Mirage, and damn if that isn't an on-the-nose name, has Stockholmed herself like it's an Olympic sport and all but glued her invisible ass to Franklin. Stockholmed, Olympic, bonding with your captor's syndrome, and a planetary-wide sporting competition, respectively. Yay. Anyways, are there more? A few. Those Tanagasha girls that jumped in with us have apparently passed their trial of blades, whatever the hell that actually means, and impressed Jin, despite not actually doing anything than slithering after her in a desperate attempt to keep up, and I'm positive we've got at least 1 stowaway, maybe more. Also, the property damage isn't our fault. Some stupid girl launched a taser net gun, which Lou dodged, and it hit a guard's cannon, causing it to misfire and blow a sign, which caused a small riot when the owner came out with a pair of plasma pistols firing, and Jake threw the remains of the sign onto her in self-defense. How the hell do you throw architecture at people in defense? Defensively, Marcus asks, and Agenda's train of thought outright crashed, so she jumps onto another set of rails to get back on track, and the stolen stuff. She prompts, a few smartasses tried to extort sexual favors while we were buying stuff like paprika or oregano, just flavor stuff, you know. We just flat out robbed them when they wouldn't take hard credits for the stuff, knocked skulls when the stupid got so heavy that they protested us stealing what they wouldn't sell. Marcus explains, and Agenda nods, distinctly aware that her Brent is currently wrapped up in Jingay and giving the serpent an abject lesson in how good it feels to be impregnated the old-fashioned way. While she was happy for her subordinate, she still wanted to taste some of her man too. And what about the death? 3 fatalities is a bit much for a food run, she says, eyeing him down sternly. Some piss for brains. Creature made of gunk swiped a grenade off Jean-Luc, fiddled with it, and set it off, splattering the stupid beast across half a street. That kicked off a panic, and when another idiot made a grab for him, his response was thankfully his boot knife and not the shaped charges he's been fucking with. The last one was somehow even more retarded than stealing a grenade minus a pin, or jumping on a clearly deranged lunatic loaded up with deadly weapons. Why did he have so much hardware to begin with? You know Jean-Luc, the dude's a meathead, and if he can't bash it, stab it, or blow it up, he really doesn't care. Damn good in demolitions, but once he gets going, it's pretty much guaranteed that there's going to be a body count, the final fatality. I'm technically partially responsible. I got into an argument with a shopkeeper to get some spicy peppers. You girls call them green evil or something. I call them jalapenos. They dared me to eat one before they'd sell them to me, and I did. There was another customer in the store. She got pissy about it for some reason and decided to eat one herself. It killed her, and I was blamed. Marcus admits, and Agenda has to fight down the full-body cringe sensation of that level of stupid. You know, I gotta admit, before I came out of cruel space and found myself surrounded by tits and ass 24/7, I'd have been devastated to see that much woman just fall over dead before she hit the ground. I think the shock killed her before the actual poison did. Fine, whatever, I don't want any more details. We're still welcome on Ashenducts, so I can't really bring myself to care. We lost no one and gained a lot, so I can't ask for more. Just make sure that those chemicals are under lock and goddess damn key. They may be flavors for you freaks of nature, but they'll kill anyone who isn't human on the ship. Don't worry, we're already processing it all into sauces and such. Every man will be responsible for his share, and they're to be locked up when not actively being used. The only danger will be if someone's stupid enough to steal of some off our plates. Then the sheer amount of salt and other fun additives will knock most of them flat out. So long as they don't go into shock, we should have time for my girls in medical to pump some stomachs and save lives. I suppose if worse comes to worse, you can use your... what did you call them? Condiments. Marcus answers. Use your condiments as weapons. With the ingredient lists those things have, they're going to be classified as war crimes in the waiting no matter what. Yay. So, look, vinegar is an acid used for heavy-duty cleaning. You scrub toilets with it. You disinfect surgical implements with it. You hide the blood with it. You don't eat it. We also preserve food with it. The process is called pickling, really, if you're fond of sour and a solid crunch. Then pickles are amazing, Marcus says before chuckling. We need to up your resistances to things like that, otherwise no one else is eating. Wait, only having 9 assholes for competition doesn't sound so bad. You do know that agricultural tech is advanced enough that literally everyone in the galaxy is at greater risk of growing so curvy they can't stand rather than starve, right? Agenda asks him, and he shrugs. But only so much is cooked at once and ... Get that out of your head. This may not be a luxury cruise liner, but the Claw not only has enough food, but everything you need to cook anything. If you need more, just make it. Yes, Captain, a starving fighter is a useless one. You boys don't need to fight for food. You do realize we're going to do that for entertainment anyways, right? And I'm going to be recording it and selling it for the big creds. She returns with an evil grin. You've already done that, haven't you? We made so much that it completely offset the cost of all the supplies we bought as well as the damages. And we bought not only extra, but the premium stuff too. Nice. Anything else, Captain, or am I free to have some fun? Go get nuts deep in someone. I've got things to do. Agenda orders him, and he salutes and runs off before she can take a swipe at him. Now it's time to deal with the not-so subtle stowaways. Unlike the humans whose scents are completely drenched in distracting and blurring pheromones, this one is sharp and clear. It's a Horchka, likely the one that had her prosthetic torn off and broken over her head when she got GRABBY. She gets the whiff of her prey and quickly picks her way into a maintenance tunnel before going up a floor and into a storage cupboard. There is the Horchka. Her mechanical arm is a generic energy construct rather than the sleek and powerful mechanical beast it was before. A cheap replacement for what she lost. Agenda growls as she rises up, upwards and upwards, until she's glaring down at the smaller woman. Balancing on her hind legs is tricky. She's slow but stable like this. With her taking up the entire doorway, the Horchka has nowhere to go but through a battle-tested and heavily armed pirate. She begins as she takes a step back. In no small amount of fear. Here for some revenge are we. He ripped out my arm and broke it over my head. Pirate, as are you. You should have known you were in deep when you went for a man who was so unconcerned. Putting aside the sheer amount of weapons they each bore, put aside the protection surrounding them. They would have to be dangerously insane or insanely dangerous to be so comfortable in the center of a pirate station. Which makes trying to get revenge after they spared you stupidly dangerous and dangerously stupid. I am in a lot of trouble, yes. So now you're either going into the brig without a fuss or put up one, and I get to have fun, Agenda says. With a smile that shows all her fangs, there's a lot of fun to be had in being a canine. Even if you can stomach plants well enough, you still have a smile to send them screaming. To her immense disappointment, the Horchka surrenders without a fight. There's also a faint whiff of urine. She remains on her hind legs as she marches. The fool down to a holding cell. Captain, one of the men says from behind her, and she whirls in shock. It's Bick. It's fine. He's barefoot for some reason and had showed up without a sound. What? Everyone else is apparently busy, so only I checked with the Dauntless. UH? They need to know any of the ports for the pirate ship the Chaining. Apparently there was. Another pirate attack, and once again only one person was grabbed. How are you people doing that? She demands. Her and the raiders she had temporarily allied with was one thing. The humans had been surprisingly armed to the teeth. But these new ones surely had more information. Not to mention, the Chaining is known for horrifically efficient raids. How the hell did they fight it off? Everyone is heavily armed at all times, and the ship has more ablative plating on it than most ships have ship. It's vaguely impressive and they have been able to get anyone at all. Speaking of, the Chaining managed to get one nab. We need to know where they go to effect rescue and possible recruitment. She sighs as she lowers herself down onto all fours and runs a hand through her mane. Get me in contact with him directly. There's a list and a lot of problems. The Chaining makes my girls here on the Claw seem like rampant cuddle monsters. You are. Compared to the sadists and lunatics on the Chaining, she finishes as she ignores his interruption. Also, their captain is a cannibal that thinks implanted bombs are a fun toy for the whole family. I mean that literally entire families. Mothers and daughters as a matter of course, but she also does so for sons and fathers. That ship and everyone on it has a death sentence in nearly half the galaxy. Shoot on sight. The rest of it has an arrest warrant out for the crazy bitches. Detain on sight. This way, please, Captain. We have a raid and rescue operation, too. Planned yesterday. Please and thank you, he asks before taking off at a dead sprint towards wherever the men had hooked up their private comm station. Down to levels and across half the ship, she reaches the internal cargo bay she'd given to the men. It's been divided into sections, and she sprints by a series of machines making a very heady smelling something, a place where they're no doubt mixing their toxic sauces, and a room that smells of so many old pheromones that if she wasn't a well-fucked woman, she'd have fallen to her knees from the slightest scent of it, into a small room with a crude but very solid comms tower. And it's activated with the press of a previously covered button. It turns on immediately, audio and visual. Commander Ollie, what's the emergency? Admiral Cistern asks right away. So this thing is the emergency. The big man must know button. Good. The Chaining is crewed by cannibals and sadists. They have a shoot on sight order in half the galaxy and detain on sight in the rest. They're fond of implanted bombs, and I've got the captain here for everything I've missed. It gets worse, much worse. Agenda says to the imaging of the Admiral, which seems to be hardening in fury. A small part of her mind said that it was one of the hottest things she'd ever seen. They're rampant rapists with a love of slowly devouring their partner until there's nothing left to fight them with. Then they dispose of them. This can take years, but the children they spawn this way. The Chaining is a multi-generational ship, mothers driving their daughters to madness and cruelty, so extermination rather than recruitment. Where do they birth? They don't have a specific birth, but there are for systems that won't. Attack them on sight in this part of the galaxy. That's where they go for and are. You'll find more information there. And where did you get this information? Most captains make a point of not being there when the Chaining is. As such, we know where they go and we stay the hell away if it's in system. They're all lunatics. The sooner you get your man back, the better. The Admiral nods in response. You need to check out the Yelthrin system, the Uriath system, the Chult system, and the Rog system. Admiral Cistern, who was taken. Bick asks in concern, Corporal Gregory Schmidt. Pukey. Bick demands and Admiral Cistern looks exasperated. Pukey? Agenda asks him, wondering what kind of man this was. His nickname. He was in the same barracks as me when we were putting the Dauntless together. In basic training, he and his squad were threatened to run until they puked, so he simply stopped, messed with his stomach, and barfed up before asking if he got out of the run. They gave him an extra mile for being a smartass, but apparently started chuckling the moment he looked away from them. That might help him. The Chaining's crew force feed bombs into their hostages as a stopgap before the implanting surgery. If he can get it out and do what Miles did here, then he may have a chance. Agenda explains, and to her surprise, she finds she cares. Damn it. She's going soft, but we need to get there yesterday. What kind of systems are Yelthrin, Uriath, Chult, and Rog? A supply post that's in disuse since the lanes shifted, an overly neutral system dedicated to telecommunications and experimental programming, a dangerous vacation system with a massive black market, and one of the top 100 most profitable casinos in the galaxy. I see ... a moment, please. He says tapping some things in and pulling something up on his personal screen. From the last reports you're closest to Chult, we also have privateers currently at Yelthrin and Rog. Uriath is on the path of the Dauntless to the Galactic core. Are you willing to check around Chult and effect rescue if the opportunity arises? Yes, the bitches give all pirates and bitches a bad name the galaxy over. If they're trying to contain a maniac half as crazy as Miles was, then this is the perfect time to get in and gut the cunts. Indeed. You have your orders? I'll be paying you 10,000 for this, with an additional 100,000 if you end up in combat. Admiral Cistern promises, and she nods. Anything else, sir? Bick prompts, get yourself and your boys ready. You need to be ready to go in hard, fast, and make a mess. He orders, and Bick snaps off a salute in response. Good man. The situation is serious enough that Agenda doesn't even smirk at the innuendo. The call is cut and Agenda turns immediately and activates her comm. Girls, we've got ourselves another mission. We're heading to Chult yesterday. The entire situation had ended up in a massive anticlimax for the Claw and the crew serving upon it. The chaining had been located in the Rog system, with the stolen man being used as a gambling token. He managed to get loose and start a fight that had apparently burnt down a large percentage of one of the more expensive casinos before freebooter reinforcements arrived, and they helped a massive mutiny which killed most of the slavers that left the chaining under the control and refit of the Dauntless. Apparently, the official story was going to be that the soldier had led the mutiny alone and was now a traumatized and brutal bounty hunter seeking to slake his hatred for slavers at Laser Point. The ship was renamed the Chainbreaker and is getting a bounty hunting license pushed through fast and hard. Apparently, the story was already being distorted as well, which would be interesting if not for the outright headache Agenda was dealing with. You see, she had been flying under the IFF of EFL Tiger, and the men had managed to talk her into landing on one of the rough planets for Sumar and are in natural air and gravity. She had said yes, and now she was dealing with madness, as apparently all the energy they'd been building up for a rescue mission had turned into a kidnapping. I get the impression that you're upset with us. Miles says from his place hauling the massive sentient he and the rest of the men had wrapped in chains. Really? Was it the growling, the posture, or the glare? She asks furiously. The snarl actually. Miles returns. Look, just because we dabbled in slave-taking doesn't mean it's something to be done casually. Furthermore, there is no call for these peoples in the galaxy. No market. Slave-taking. Captain, this is clearly an animal. A dangerous animal that on record has killed over 100 campers. This is more pest control. Well, hunting too, but pest control. The Chult flame spewers were proven fully sentient nearly 100 years ago. They're not fully evolved yet, but they're people. She counters Miles' protest. So you're telling me that this dragon-looking beast is smart enough to know that burning down entire families for entertainment is fucking wrong. Rue demands, and she pauses. Jake grabs the chains keeping the smoking mouth of the spewer shut and looks it in the eye. It has a brain, boys. Fine then, it's not a hunt. It's vigilante justice with cannibalism to hide the body. I'm getting my fucking dragon steaks. Miles amends with a tinge of sheer viciousness she hadn't seen in him before. And coat. I'm still getting a fucking dragon wing coat, and I'll do horrible things to anyone that gets in my way. Franklin declares from near the back of the gaggle of lunatics. By the goddess... I know this is going to get worse before it gets better. So just give me the big blow and get it over with. Agenda groans into her paw. Of course, these axiom. Starved men would be like this. They're men and they're starved of axiom. All the nutrients that would have gone to keep them sane went to keeping them alive. Our next meal here had some sort of larder filled from its latest rampage. Apparently, the evil fucker has a taste for veal. So we called down as much of medical as possible and letting you know, in no uncertain terms, that Dragon Bitch here is going to die, and many of us are curious as to what giant asshole lizard monster tastes like after being barbecued, Miles says, and things start falling into place. This is as much about some form of moral outrage as anything else. I see ... This doesn't go anywhere until I get back, she says before pacing off to where half her ship's medical personnel are crowding around the cave the men had dragged the spewer out of. All right, girls, someone explain to me what veal is and why it's so awful for a flame spewer to ... she demands as some of the nurses back away to leave a clean line between her and a very badly beaten child. She looms over and takes in a deep whiff to get the scent beyond hurting. It's a young male of her kind. Maybe 4 years old. Hey little loper, are you alright? She asks gently as she pads up to him. She glances back to see that the men are staring at her through the gap. She nods. She understands now. Veal is beaten and abused young. She get further clarification later. I'm Captain Agenda. Lilpaw, what's your name? I'm Johnny, he says softly as he sniffs up at her. She holds out one of her forepaws for him to take, and he does. You ... You smell like a mommy. Not yet, but soon, she says softly. It's all she can do to not simply sweep the pup into her chest and hold him there, but with all his bruising and maybe even broken bones that would only bring him further pain. Is that why you're so big? He asks, and she smiles. Yes. Before a lady becomes a mommy, they grow really big and soft to show off how good a mommy they can be. They slim down after so they can focus more on being a mommy than just looking like one, though. He asks, and she leans over and gives him a slight lick on the forehead. Don't worry about it. Now, Johnny, what's your second name? Agenda asks again. She can feel her instincts hitting her like a mallet. If she can't find this pup's family sometime soon, then she become his family. Howl ... he says, and she resists groaning. In frustration, Howl is a name common enough that he might as well said his last name was anybody. All right, little Howl, let's get you someplace safe and fed so we can find your family, all right? She asks, and he gives out a sniffle as his eyes start to water before he rushes forward and hugs her. There, little one, you're safe now. You're safe, she coos as the dam breaks, and he starts sobbing into her chest while griping her fur as tightly as he can. Captain the other child ... she ... double quotes Dr. Lillian Greywind begins before shaking her head. Agenda turns the situation over in her mind as she mentally berates herself for somehow becoming a bleeding heart since meeting the humans. Apparently pregnancy has an effect on a girl. Why didn't anyone warn her? She gently tucks her arm under the sobbing pup and slowly stands up before turning around to look at the men wrestling the beast as it tries to make another escape, a futile one. "I'll want a steak and none of your evil spices," she says, as she passes them. "Yes, ma'am. What about the boy?" The questions came from halfway down the line of men keeping the beast pinned. Ruin less her ears are lying. Maybe. Have a few extra ready. She doesn't even look at who's spoken. They're grown men. They don't need constant comfort. A part of her mind thinks maybe she shouldn't have just picked him up, but if there was any danger, then the ship's doctors would have stopped her. She carries him into the Tiger, and with plenty of warning ahead onto the ship's helm. It had the safest and most comfortable seat on the entire ship there, her personal command couch. Her own bed would be better, but it was still musty and drenched. In the scent of her and Miles enjoying themselves upon it. It's only when she settled herself down and cuddled poor little Johnny close that she realizes that several of the nurses had been keeping pace. "I see the maternal instincts have hit you, Captain," Dr. Lena says with a smile as she canters around and shakes her antlers a bit. The gentle Carib takes a deep breath and leans in almost nose to little Johnny as he glows ever so slightly. She then leans back with a nod. "He just needs some time now. We've gotten ahead of infections, and the men put a stop to the monster before it could tenderize him further. He'll be fine, but he needs his family, Captain," she says before pacing around them both for a bit, shaking her antlers the entire time before nodding and cantering away. The little pup nuzzles into her, and she holds him gently and closely to offer what comfort she can, with only the little gestures from her to get things done. The ship prepares, and she feels the entire thing vibrate. "Captain," Mercy says into her communicator. It's low so she doesn't bother Johnny much. "What? We did a look around. We couldn't find anything left of the family but some wreckage. The ID we've been able to peel off the damaged cards and chunks of charcoal say that the family is 50 girls large. 10 of them took him here to expand his horizons. We've got contact info for the rest. Good now, double quotes, Captain, We could just stop. We're out of that business, Mercy. Besides, if we did, the men would likely turn on us, which puts their entire species on our case. Do you really want to fight Yor? What's his family name again? Takata. His proper name is Ru Takata, or Takata-Ru in the ways of his people. Hoping to visit someday. They live in cruel space. I'll never see his home. Apparently, he's missing some festival where soft pink petals soar through the air due to the cherry trees around his homeland, It's amazingly mean. That they're talking about a place they want to show us but can't. Agenda notes Riley. Are the men getting homesick? That won't end well. Why can't they show you? Johnny asks, and she smiles down at him. He's bouncing back well if he's already asking questions. He might recover well. There are men on this ship that come from a very dangerous place. It's not dangerous for them, but it is for every other race. They know it's dangerous, but it's still their home and they miss it, so they talk about it. She says, and he blinks. Are they Are they from the same place as the monster? No, even the monster can't live where they live. Can I live there? No, only they can. Why? He asks. Have you heard of cruel space? Part of the galaxy that all the axiom flows to and away from. The black bit at the end of all the lines and maps. Yay, everyone knows about it. They're from inside it. They only just escaped, she says, and he gasps. They're okay. A little strange, but okay. Really? He asks. Yes, really. Miles says, walking in. Wait, what are we talking about? There's a savory scent that washes over the bridge. I brought you some well-done skewer steak as requested, and a smaller one for our little friend. He says, handing her a plate and putting one in front of Johnny. Is that? Johnny asks him, the monster part of it anyways. You're a man, a grown-up boy, right? Johnny asks after staring at the plate in front of him for a few moments. Yes. Miles says, crouching down to Johnny's level as the tiny loper looks up at him with pleading eyes. Will it ever stop hurting? Pain of loss. It does and doesn't. You get used to it. The thing about it is that you have a choice, an important one. You can choose to let it hold you down, to always hurt, to hold it close, or or you can choose to step above it. This is this is the worst day of your life. It can be something that holds you down or something you rise above. It won't ever not hurt, but you can use the hurt to grow stronger, Miles explains as little Johnny looks up at him in shock. That sounds like experience talking. Agenda says softly, I've had some tragedy and pain in my life. Who hasn't? This is just just the best advice I can give for it. The nightmares will be bad, kiddo, but you survived. You did good, he says, and Johnny sniffs before picking up a small bit of the flame spewer in front of and taking a bite. His eyes light up. There we go. Fill yourself up, kiddo. We've already carved up most of the beast and have it in storage for later. At little Johnny and her own nose's hearty recommendation, Agenda takes a bite out of the steak that had been offered to her and then has to restrain herself from all but drinking it down. How'd you make this so tasty? Johnny asks, and Agenda has to agree with the question. There are a lot of ways to cook a steak. We're cooking them all the way through to be sure, but that doesn't mean there aren't a dozen small tricks for me to use. This is just basic. Of course, they get really good when we spice them properly. No, you will not be serving us that poison. It's not poison. The things you think are tasty are banned in 1,000 star systems. They're poison. You eat chemical. Weapons. No, you girls are just wimpy. Enjoy the meal, little man, Miles says, ruffling Johnny's mane a little. Now, does anyone in here want some flame spewer steaks? Aren't they thinking beings? Yes, but this one was a mass-murdering monster and deserved to die. With so much perfectly edible meat lying around, the boys and I are having a little grill off, a fierce competition to see who can cook the best. Are you trying to curve up my ship? Agenda asks him with a sly smile as she moves to the second steak on her plate. Is it working? Yes, she replies as she takes a big bite and savors the taste. Cotty downshift paced around the small room she was in, small for her. The ship wasn't designed for a being her size. She'd have to crawl on her hands and knees as her car form was much too chunky for the hallways to get around easily. Still, they'd been very, very nice. One of the cargo bays had been repurposed to house her, and those in her general size category. Not many biological species got to her size, but Axiom experimentation, other robots, and other such bits mean that the galaxy could go from barely reaching a human man's ankle to larger than some starships. She had spoken a great deal about the galaxy to Admiral Cistern, and he had listened to her advice. It felt so good to be listened to, and have someone actually concerned for her opinion. With words, she had altered the course of a ship she had no authority over for a species she hadn't even known about several months ago. Back when she she clutches at her head as she runs calming algorithms to lower her RPM, and she lets out a slight electronic whine. She slowly runs down an algorithm that counts down from 100. Every 5 she runs a quick check through a system and gives it a bit of a flex, the time to slow down and consider that she's in full control of her body and not who she was. She could remember the sheer sadistic desire to create a copy of herself to dominate, proof that there was nothing that she wouldn't be able to take control of. Even herself. How terrible that control was. How absolutely vile to be under the whip hand. She counts down again. She counts down twice more as the sheer guilt and shame of what she had once been flows through her. Then her communicator pings, a high keening note she can't ignore. Her mental exercises are becoming less and less frequent, but are still a huge part of her day. It's a quick update. There's going to be a week-long delay to get around the arrangement systems. Apparently a series of laws that dictate that all men with less than 100 wives are to be held until they're married off will be an unacceptable delay to their mission. That had been an almost funny conversation with the Admiral. The expression his face had taken at the idea of being married 100 times had sent her into a giggle fit. He had promptly taken out a flask her scanners told her was almost pure ethanol and bat aside her hand as she tried to stop him from what looked like a suicide attempt. He then explained that it was a perfectly safe thing for him to drink so long as he doesn't go into excess. The conversation had turned to marriage and how to keep his men from being dragged into a shotgun wedding. He had thanked her and come to the bridge crew immediately to slow the hell down. We're taking a detour. He had then excused himself and rushed to the bridge. A ping from her communicator signifies another message, with a video attachment labeled, "Right out," of an action movie. Pukey goes Punisher on pirates. Curious, she starts the movie and gasps. She had heard of the soldier Commander Gregory Schmidt being taken by the infamous crew of the Chaining. His skin is slowly turning purple as he glares out from inside his glass cage. His short cropped hair and stubble does little to cover the fact that he's been thoroughly beaten and abused. He paces inside the glass container, cameras trained on him as a price is listed. His value is set at 40 million credits. Oddly enough, there's a green bar with the words 100/100ths framing. The bottom of the screen, there's a game played. He's not up for sale, he's up for ante. She pauses as she tries to figure out where he is. The walls and floors are gold-plated with garish lights. Entire platters of expensive drinks and snacks are being brought everywhere, and there's a quick game before a cheer rings out from the crowd. The scarred and brutal face of the pirate leers at Gregory as the glass bell is put on floating platform before being lowered down to the pirate. Text plays across the bottom. Pukey would like to battle. Pukey chooses Pukey. Evil Casino chooses Pirate Bitch, disregarding the gibberish she watches as the bell is raised, and he spits something at her. She flinches back, and as she does so, he tosses something concealed in his hand behind her. Pukey uses spit. Pirate Bitch is confused. The Dreen holds up a remote in a clear threat, and he punches her in the face in response, grabs the remote, and she wrestles it away before pushing the button with a scream of fury. The thing he threw detonates behind her and puts her off balance. Pirate Bitch hurts itself in its confusion. He grabs the remote, rams it into her compound eye, and then grabs a gilded pistol off her belt. Pukey uses fast hands. He shoves it under her chin and pulls the trigger. The plasma flash cooks the pirate captain's brains and sprays the steaming chunks over the now panicking crowd. It's super effective. Pirate Bitch is fucking dead. Evil Casino sends out Worthless Mooks X2. He grabs the pirate captain's corpse and uses the insectal woman's body as a shield as some of her allies open fire at him with lasers. Pukey uses corpse shield. The precise weapons flash cook the body, and he quickly fires twice more with the plasma pistol before running full tilt into the crowd. Corpse shield negates the attacks. Pukey uses competence. Worthless Mooks 1 and 2 are fucking dead. The view switches to a hallway that shows him running full sprint down it. The man's got very good form, and the sheer focus on his face sends a tingle down her processor. Evil Casino sends out a giant fucking mantis. A snicked wearing a load of ornamental chains comes out of a side door as he rushes by and begins to give chase. A giant fucking mantis uses pursuit. The pirate takes a few swings before taking off and slamming into him from the back at her fastest flying speed. The bar at the bottom shakes and 4 points are subtracted and the green bar goes down slightly. She swipes at his face and he screams as her upper arm with blade comes back red with blood. A giant fucking mantis uses cut, an additional 12 points are subtracted from the green bar. Pukey uses gun. She eats a face full of plasma and Gregory rises up with a massive wound over the left half of his face. It's super effective. A giant fucking mantis is fucking dead. The eye has been torn out. He reaches up and just barely holds off from clutching at his face before putting his hand down. His jaw squares and he quickly frisks down the pirate. Pukey's rage is building. Pukey uses thief. He takes her credit discs, a laser pistol that he shoves into his belt, and what looks like a small transponder. Lucky me. He grunts out before a sound from off-camera catches his attention. His glare down the hallway is chilling. It shows him rushing down to more, gunning down several more chaining crew members. Evil Casino sends out Snake Shiva. Then everything goes completely wrong. A desert Nagasha, painted completely black and white in horrific patterns, brings down a plasma blade with all 6 of her arms and takes his left arm at the shoulder. Snake Shiva uses lightsaber. It's super effective. The green bar falls all the way down to 10 points. He staggers back with an enormous bellow of agony as he brings up the plasma pistol and cooks 2 of her arms. Pukey uses rapid shot. Snake Shiva is stunned. Then, in a spur of utter madness, he grabs the pistol in his teeth and grabs the plasma blade by the handle. Pukey uses thief. Boots the Nagasha in the waist and turns the weapon around to impale her between the breasts and pulling up to reduce everything above the breasts into 2 charred halves. Pukey uses lightsaber. Snake Shiva is fucking dead. It shows him racing down another hall, and as a pirate comes out of a side room, he carves clean through her in a single swipe of the plasma sword. Evil Casino sends out a worthless mook. Pukey uses lightsaber. Worthless mook is fucking dead. It then switches to what looks like an emergency medical room in the casino, and Gregory races past it. Then he slides back into view, deactivating the sword and holding it into fingers as he opens the door and walks in. Pukey uses seduction. What's this? Pukey is evolving. There's a few moments with the text at the bottom saying press B to stop. Then there's a jingle and he walks out with a cybernetic eye and an axiom projecting cybernetic upper arm with a hard light hologram for his lower arm and hand. Pukey has evolved into a motherfucking cyborg. Tiny red scaled arms reach out of the medical chamber, and he pulls out a Cobe nurse to kiss her full in the muzzle as the tiny reptile giggles. Her enormous breasts and thighs, barely contained by her nurse's uniform, say that she's lived her whole life without any male affection. She then hands him back his pistols, and he tucks them into his belt. He then whispers something to her. Pukey uses seduction. The wild naughty nurse joins the team. Naughty nurse is now nicknamed Jiggles. The tiny Cobe smiles brightly before nodding and hopping off the stool she had pushed to the door and rushing ahead. Gregory follows with his plasma sword reactivated. It cuts to another feed where a pair of Horchka are setting up a pair of plasma cannons. Evil Casino sends out mildly competent Mooks X to complete and utter overkill for a person on foot. Then the tiny Cobe rushes past and is ignored. She pauses, turns around and shouts a warning to him. Jiggles uses warning. The plasma cannons go off and Gregory dives over them, rolls and brings up the laser pistol to cook one of the Horchka. It's super effective. Mildly competent Mooks miss. Pukey uses gun. Mildly competent Mook number 1 is fucking dead. The other, Horchka, in a fury grabs the Cobe nurse by the front of her shirt and howls in the tiny, terrified woman's face. Mildly competent Mook uses roar. Jiggles is terrified, then is carved into as Gregory slices her torso in half with a single swipe of his plasma sword and catches the little Cobe gently in his hard light arm. Pukey uses lightsaber. Mildly competent Mook is fucking dead. He gives her a slight kiss and she snuggles into him. Pukey uses seduction. Jiggles is no longer terrified. There's a pause as the nurse explains something to Gregory, whose jaw drops before grinning. Jiggles uses education. Pukey can now equip a fucking plasma cannon. He kisses the code Pukey uses seduction, sweeps her onto his back, tucks away the pistols, and opens the side port of one of the plasma cannons before thrusting his hard light arm into it. The systems link up and the plasma cannon adheres to just below the projector on his cybernetic arm. The cannon, arm, and his eye all link up and illuminate with a bright white light. Pukey enters massacre mode. This is even more one-sided now. Gregory's smile is both vicious and eager. The view cuts to seeing a huge number of casino guards and pirates setting up a firing line in waiting for Gregory. Evil Casino sends out everyone. He barrels through the door, immediately dives to the right, but his cannon fires 3 times and scores just as many kills. Pukey uses dodge bitch. It was super effective. He lets off another 3 blasts and their sideways projection causes them to hit multiple kills. Pukey uses massacre. It's super effective. Several plasma shots come rocketing towards Gregory and she pauses the video. She sets down the communicator and thinks, how is he doing that? How is he dodging plasma shot? He shouldn't be that fast without severe cybernetic or axiom enhancement. That arm and I won't do it. So how? She puts it aside and starts the video again. Gregory lets out another barrage of plasma and the line breaks in fear. Pukey is on a rampage. Everyone is fucking dead or running like hell? At this point, an alarm kicks off in the casino as they've apparently decided that they can't contain the situation. There's a distinct and clear gap in the video. A still image of Gregory carving a powerful-looking lidris under her 8 waists and completely slaughtering the gigantic multi-woman in a single swing of a plasma sword. Pukey uses lightsaber. Hooter's Hydra is fucking dead. The next is of the tiny Cobe shooting with the laser pistol and frying the handle of a plasma sword as Gregory moves to parry it. Jiggles uses disarm. Casino Thug is fucked. The next image shows Gregory kneeing a Tret in the face as his plasma cannon flash evaporates a mega slobe and beheads another Tret. Pukey is on a rampage. Tidal Ho and the Mooks are fucking dead. The image changes to showing Gregory launching plasma shots into numerous walls and machines. Pukey uses arson. It flashes into more and more shots of him lighting things up until it finishes with him in front of a blazing inferno that used to be the casino with a massive cigar smoking between his teeth, an enormous smile on his face, the Cobe cheering, while hanging off his back and the plasma sword held to the side. Evil Casino is a smoking crater. Pukey leveled up. Pukey is now level 23. The video comes to an end and she just processes what she just saw for a few moments. Then she emails the sender asking why he sent it to her. I thought you could use something funny to brighten your day, is the almost instant reply. Funny. Where was the joke? And what was with that commentary or the bar? She sends back and then an email with a large folder drops. What's a sapphire have to do with anything? It was a joke based on this series of games. Enjoy! Gotta catch 'em all! Before we start, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. Only 4% of my channel is subscribed. When it reaches 1,000 subscribers, I will release a special video. The first sign was a whisper in the void, an anomaly detected. There's a whine from deep inside her. She doesn't want to let him go. Little Johnny is so sweet and cute, and ... she gives herself a chop across the muzzle with her free paw. Not only is Johnny going to the family that adores him, but to his birth mother and father as well. Some random pirate pretending to be a good person isn't going to cut it for a growing boy. The final door opens and there's a flurry of movement as the entire pack all but pounces on her, and Johnny is swept away, and she has to resist taking a chunk out of someone as the tiny child on the mend is swept into a world of concern. Nuzzles, kisses, and reassurances. There's a faint and soft voice that asks for calm and things settle down in a hurry. Johnny is now lying on the back of a full-grown Lopen man who walks up to Agenda on soft pads without the telltale click of claws. He's impeccably groomed and almost artistically attractive. If the man was on a poster, she'd expect that he had been photoshopped to look that pretty. I would like to thank you for helping my son in this trying time, he says slowly, and Agenda blinks in confusion. Why are you faking a Meccan-Reach accent? Agenda asks, and he looks offended. That main accent is not faked. I was risen from Pewfoot within the glorious reach, he protests, and I was born in cruel space. That doesn't mean I have to mangle galactic trade through being sloppy, Miles says, leaning into view. Afternoon, he says to the stunned group. That a threat from Z Death Zone, the Loper man says, and Miles snorts. Human, our first ambassador to the Federation of Systems is en route. And you are Commander Miles Brent. I'm attached to the EFL Tiger as both a crew member and liaison to the Dauntless. You're Mr. Howell. Gruber Howell. Gruber says, and Miles nods. Human, yeah, that kind of race. Are you BMO 100-200? Only one like us, he says, and Agenda sighs. Oh, right, sorry, he says at the stunned look of the crowd. He then leans out of sight. Main loves, comfort hours on. I must speak we, sis man, Gruber says before gently picking up Johnny. My's on, say your goodbyes to Ms. Lilpaw. We are going home after. Zissia. Yes, father, Johnny says as he's slowly lowered to the ground. You, Vetok between Menya. Gruber asks, stepping out of the room and looking straight at Miles. Sure, you are right with this, Miles responds before glancing up towards Agenda. Yes, go have your chat, I'll be fine. Agenda assures him. Gruber gestures for Miles to follow as Agenda walks into the room with his wives. He leads Miles some steps away where they can't be heard casually by those in the room. Z-O ... A news pezzese. Gruber asks, his accent getting thick enough to serve as armor plating. Human. Our diplomatic ship is apparently taking a detour to get around some arrangement systems. To many men aboard for it to be anything but a massive time sink. If you's being honest about the amount of men there are compared to Voman's end, that is most understandable. But that is concern for later. My's on. He ... Gruber pauses before swallowing and speaking slowly to clear away his accent. What have you done to him? He carries himself with too much grace for one who has been through horror. Myself and the other men put things into perspective for him and told him about his choices. Be crushed under the pain of that day, or stand on it and rise above it. Granted, it took all of us trying to explain it about 5 different ways each for it to actually make sense to him. There's a lot of cultural drift, I can imagine. Z-Beast, that creatures at kilt my wives. Is it Deet? Gruber asks, and Miles gives a vicious smile. Did it suffer? We chained it up, dragged it into the ship, and cut it up for parts, cooked it, and ate it. Your son had a plateful himself, as did every crew member that can stomach meat. Is there any left? Gruber asks with a distant look of hate. Sorry, my kind has a heavy poison resistance. We're marinating the remaining meat. The amounts we put on them have a shot of killing you from smell alone. That Vasset. Z message stated that it was an animal, but Z word murder Vass used. Apparently flame spewers are thinking beings. I say that they taste good with ... what's it called, galactic trade. Ah yes, ground pain kernels and sodium chloride. You do realize that balls of them are used in torture, yes? Gruber asks, and Miles raises an eyebrow. I know they could theoretically be used in torture mostly because if you get them in a cut it hurts, but I usually just eat the stuff. It's used to make food taste better, Miles says, and Gruber nods at the babbling positive things are. Fine. The question is, how do you know that pepper and salt can be used in torture? Seems like some awfully specific knowledge. Oh, nine. I did not know, I merely assumed. Of course, Miles says as he checks the small computer on his wrist. Axiom Tech was something he was really starting to appreciate. By the by, how did the sale go? Zale. That Zale? Gruber asks, clearly on the defensive. I'm a sniper, a type of military assassin. I work with a crew of mercenaries. My fellows are saboteurs and trained brutes. You availed yourself of the black market, and I honestly don't care. I'm just trying to make conversation while the girls fuss over your son. Then all I will say is that when you have a great deal of zings that have not been gained in Vazosers approves NZ must be salt in Vaz Z won't see. I understand. Much of the things I use so my meals don't bore me to tears are less than approved of by paper pushers. That makes sense, which means you can brag if you want. You chose a good spot so no one can listen in. Hi. Needed to know if I had the option of shooting you if needed. It goes both ways. Rid Industries plasma pistol, Beretta 9mm. Hollow point bullets? Is that kinetic? Yep, interesting. You won't be bringing this up with the vibes. All men need a hobby. Yes, venu. Mine is to be part of a gentleman's club. Then rich our lives VIT ... more daring means than most. I understand. I'm afraid I can't match it though. Due to my species being so new on the scene, I feel like I'm living in sin just keeping my little part of the ship happy. Really? Yay. I've had 1 or 2 girlfriend before shipping out to the stars, but the one that didn't cheat went stalker on me. Now I'm dealing with dozens of gorgeous women who can't get enough of the miles. These simple things in life are often unappreciated. Vise out context. Just remember to balance your enrichment against what you already have. Dozens of loving ladies and at least one adorable son, many daughters as well. In that light high am truly blessed, Gruber says before slowly standing up and leaning against the wall next to Miles, towering over the human like a giant. Z.O. VATs it like Liffink Vise out Voman Effervere. It can be pretty lonely. If you're hurt, you have to suck it up. If you have a problem, you have to solve it. Asking for help can be seen as a weakness, and being soft just gets you laughed at. I don't know if it's better outside cruel space, though. It's a gentler life, it looks like, but that sort of thing doesn't let a man face adversity and grow. It's probably not so bad on the EFL Tiger. Those women are mercenaries after all, but still, I'm being coddled. That is the problem when the galaxy values you more than you do. The place limits upon things, whether or not those limits are in. Your way matters little. Sie are still there. Still, moping never gets anything done. Got any tips or tricks for getting around it? Of course, main friend. It can be most easy. You need to simply play through their expectations, like affecting a thicker accent than usual, or pretending that your gang is just a club of friends, knowing where the less than ... Legitimate businesses are also helps. Gruber says with a huge smile full of gleaming dagger-like teeth. Miles matches it. Play the system. Got it. It seems to be the general attitude the Admiral has anyways. Sounds like a smart man. Perhaps the political scene will be more than just a gigantic waste of tax credits and time now. I'll have to pay some more attention. Any advice? Yay, there is one concern. One of the products we've already started selling is a candy called chocolate. A lot of beings can eat it, but it's poisonous to canines on our home world. Be careful. Noted. As for advice of my own, I suggest learning at least a small amount of the axiom arts. A small amount of physical enhancement can work wonders. When properly timed. Shit. Miles groans as he hangs his head. Story. Now. Gruber orders with a smile. One of my fellows is obsessed with axiom, and he's already insane enough without being told he's right. What are the styles in its use? I've lived my life all but swimming in null. Miles asks, fishing a little bit to see how much of Franklin's rambling is accurate. There are two styles, the weaving and the wielding. The wielding is what I recommend. It allows the conjuring of weapons at higher levels of discipline and can increase your physical capacity. The weaving, however, can be massively potent but difficult to control. Just two ways, technically. Nearly all technology use is some form of axiom use, but technically correct online really matters to those proving a pedantic point and paperwork. Good to know. Also, if you'd happen to be in the mood to tell me how hard or easy it is to pull off some less than legal extracurricular activities, I'd be deeply appreciative, of course. He almost cheers before leaning out and glancing down, always before smiling widely. First, you need a loyal crew of gents. The explanation is cut off by a roar and the sounds of something being slammed into something metallic. I know one of you guys is involved with that. What's going on? Miles demands into his wrist computer. Land Dragon slipped a chain down here. Victor suplexed it. Marcus answers in a stunned tone. He what? Miles demands, positive he misheard that. The Russian gave a dragon a German suplex. Marcus says slowly, what is a German suplex? Gruber asks, do you have it on video? Miles asks, very much wanting to see something like that. Hang on, I'll ask. Never mind. He says as he gets an email from Rue. It's entitled, I'll be adding effects later. The video plays as Gruber leans over him for a good look. There's an enormous wingless flame spewer chained beside the entrance to a bar with a sign denoting that troublemakers will be fed to Umbubu. Some idiot flaunts a hunk of meat they'd bought in front of the dragon beast and Umbubu snaps for it and gets not only the meat but an arm as well. Its lunge snaps the chain and, sensing its freedom, the brutal being begins rushing towards the camera. Then a pale blur slams into it from the side with a deep bellow. The eyes of the monster grow comically large as it finds itself flung upwards and backwards until it's slammed into the floor. A comparatively smaller form can be seen holding it around the base of tail before letting go and letting out a cheer. The video shifts to show the scene from the side, the snapping chain, the blood, the scream, and then the pale man rushes too. The side dodges a flailing clawed foot and grabs it around the base of the tail before heaving himself and the beast backwards to slam it into the deck plating. Then it shows it from directly above. Miles turns the display off and slowly turns to look up at Gruber, who leans away to no longer crowd him. Is your entire species insane? He asks, and Miles opens his mouth to refute this before pausing and thinking. Then he shrugs. Fantastic. I look forward to what your race brings to the galaxy. Was that sarcasm? Oh no, you must understand, Sir Brent. Life is dull outside of your cruel space. A man grows up and lives their life, wanting nothing. There is no goal to strive for, nothing to prove to anyone, and no expectations upon you. A cage of velvet and gold, but a cage nonetheless. They call it male obsession when we chafe at these limits. Gruber explains, so I was much more on the nose than I thought when I said all men need a hobby. Miles remarks, you don't know the half of it. Gruber confirms before glancing towards the room with the girls. Excuse me, but we've spent a long away from the girls. They'll start to question if we're much longer. It's important to know where the limits are, he says, lowering down to all fours and walking to the room, his thick accent back in place. Miles follows him in with a smile that's somewhat plastered on. Story continues, so watch next video. Before we start, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. Only 4% of my channel is subscribed. When it reaches 1,000 subscribers, I will release a special video. The first sign was a whisper in the void, an anomaly detected.